This is season 2, episode 4 of the Launch School podcast. Now, this season was supposed to feature capstone graduates with the intention of showcasing what heights a slow mastery based curriculum can achieve. However, I just couldn't wait for another season to talk about the topic in this episode, and that's around community and studying in a group through the core curriculum. I asked Gabe, Ben, and Arthur to come onto the podcast today to share their story about how they, as a group, are supporting and helping each other through the core curriculum. To me, they've cracked the code with regards to mastery based learning. There are so many positives to mastery based learning, and if you've been listening to the podcast and following what we're doing at Launch School, you know the results we're seeing and how employers are responding to our graduates, and of course, how outrageous our salaries are. But what we don't talk about very often is what a lonely process it can be to go through and study in a mastery based way. In this episode, we'll shed some light in how you can get the best of both worlds. How can you have a community and have group based support structure while also reaping the benefits of mastery based learning? We'll talk about that in this episode.
Welcome to the Launch School podcast, where we discuss education, programming, and how to build a rewarding career in software engineering.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Launch School podcast. Today's episode is quite unique in that I have three guests from the core curriculum, Arthur Kaufman, Ben Zielinski, and Gabe De Almeida. Do you guys want to just go one by one and introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure. I'm Arthur. I am currently based in New York. I'm a high school English teacher. Yeah, I teach high school English in the Bronx.
So you're home now because we're in the middle of the coronavirus.
Yeah, we're all shut down. We're all working from home. Everything is crazy right now, but we're still doing what we can.
Yeah, are you actually teaching online, teaching history online?
Yeah, actually teaching online. So we are actually
Wow.
delivering lessons, doing videos, using Zoom, doing all these things. So we're going to do what we can until the worst of this is out. But yeah, I was, I've been teaching for a while. I've been teaching for 5+ years. And kind of this fall, I started thinking about seriously making a transition out of this career, doing something else.
And it's March right now.
Reasons.
This is being recorded in March 2020.
Yes.
So in fall was just maybe 6 months ago-ish, something like that.
Yeah. I think it was in about September that I started thinking seriously about this. For a number of reasons that I won't go into, but I love the kids, but the other stuff is making it hard to be a good teacher these days.
Yeah, it's too many demands put on teachers, isn't it? Like you have to be, a psychiatrist. They're also doing like weapons training. I mean, it's crazy nowadays, the demands put on teachers.
Yeah, it's very problematic. And just the way they're teaching, everything's going towards the test and all that. It's a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started looking at what I could do. I've always been fascinated by the internet. When I was 14, I taught myself how to make websites just by viewing source on web pages and trying to figure out what the HTML and CSS was doing. But I never learned really JavaScript or any of the other coding languages, so I always felt that was kind of beyond me. But when I started thinking about what I wanted to do after teaching, it kind of seemed like kind of maybe a natural field to look into or pursue. So I started looking at boot camps, and that turned out to be, I don't know, man. There's as you know, of course, there's a lot of great boot camps out there, and I was looking at all of them. I was doing my research. I was seeing what I could find, but at the end of the day,
Maybe your teacher instincts kicked in or something where you're like 3 months. I don't know.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of fancy marketing stuff out there. There's a lot of so at the end of the day, yeah, I think that's what it was. I think my teacher instincts kicked in. I think I said, I don't have confidence that I can learn this stuff in 3 months. I don't have confidence that I can do it on their schedule. I don't have confidence. It's a gamble that you're taking. You're laying down 20, 30 grand.
Yeah, it's a huge gamble.
And part of your life. So eventually all that searching brought me to Launch School.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're always sort of the last place people find. So I'm glad that you, didn't stop your search. And I guess you're doing Launch School part-time since you're a you're teaching high school still.
I am. So I am currently. So I started launch school around October, and I yeah I decided I was going to do it part time. The guidance on the stuff on the website was saying, you need to do at least 15 hours a week to really, kind of stick. And I figured I could probably do that part time at least. So I found that it worked out really well for me coming home after work, doing it, and then doing it on the weekends. And it really became, I guess, uh, I was just fascinated by how much I liked the curriculum, how much I liked what I was doing. So um, ended up doing, I think I've done about 20 hours a week since then, since
And where are
October.
you now in the curriculum? About.
I'm currently in JS 210,
Okay.
so I'm learning JavaScript.
Yeah, so you're almost done with the core. Maybe well, like 3 courses.
Yeah, there's about 3 courses left. The end is in sight, at least I'll say at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. Should we move on next to Ben?
Hey everybody, my name is Ben. I based in Cleveland right now. I had a long career in the restaurant and wine industries, and then I actually got a staph infection in my hip that sort of laid me up for a few months. And during that time, I did a little investigating as to career changes, and I got hip to the idea of programming. And so I went and I took another online course, which will remain nameless, but um, was great for what it offered, and great for the if you want to use it as sort of an intro to see if that's what you like. But then I got done with a couple courses, and I thought, wow, these courses are over, and I don't really feel like I understand the material. And then would do some projects and realize that I had no one to give me feedback on the projects themselves. So I started looking for a curriculum that offered those exact things. So did my research and came across Launch School, started reading up on the mastery-based learning approach, which sounded exactly like what I was looking for, and has proved to be that way. I started Launch School in, I think it's roughly 6 months ago. I'm in JavaScript as well. And I'm doing it full time. Quarantine life is no different than pre-quarantine life for me.
Good time
And
to exit the restaurant business, I guess, because that's being
you
impacted
aren't
big time.
joking.
Yeah.
You are not joking. I feel for all my old people and that are now looking for unemployment. So
Yeah, it's tough. They're closing down all the restaurants. Okay, yeah, great backstory. And once again, I hear this over and over and over. I think of all the students we have, I just it's never ever been. It's like, oh, Launch School, I found you guys first, right? And and here I am. It's always I did something else and either didn't work or I didn't trust the marketing or something like that, and then I come. So, all right, and last, Gabe.
Yeah, my name is Gabe. I'm 24 years old. I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I started launch school back in August, I believe. So it's been around 7 to 8 months now. I found launch school. I believe I was just going through Reddit. I saw a link. I clicked on it. I read the homepage of the site. I was sold right there and then. I didn't need anything else. I signed up immediately after that. The reason why I chose to even look into any of this in the first place is, and not to sound too braggadocious and whatnot, just because my peers are pretty impressive. So I want to give myself some background. But I've been building projects since I was at 14. I've been building projects
Like
slash
web
companies. They weren't,
projects.
yeah, any
Okay.
sort of thing, any idea that I've had, a news aggregator, fitness websites, the usual. And every single time I had to build something, I always outsourced it because I had absolutely no idea how to do anything other than set up a WordPress site that had way too many plugins and took way too long to load. And so I always felt like I couldn't communicate with them. I couldn't look at the code. I just didn't understand anything. And so I always told myself that one day I'm going to figure out how to do it. One day in the future, whoever knows how far out it is, I was going to teach myself how to code. And the last company that I built was acquired by a company out in California. I went out there. I worked with them as well. I was their growth director, and I was there for about a year. And 6 months into it, I knew that it was not my jam. I could not work for somebody else. I just didn't buy into the whole scheme of things. I wasn't challenged. It was too monotonous, too repetitive. And so I moved out back to Boston. And yeah, I stumbled upon programming again. I was like, oh, maybe I'll check out a Udemy course or two. And I found Launch School, like I said, through a Reddit post. And since then, it's been great. I've been putting in about 40 hours a week now
Oh,
that
wow.
I'm full time. Yeah, because yeah, I didn't say this, but the company that I built was acquired when I was in my sophomore year of college, going through my finance degree, and so I had to put that on pause. And then when I came back to Boston, I decided to take another stab at it, and that was when I started taking launch school. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I could do this part time and it'll still be good. But then a semester in, I decided to pause school again and just focus on launch school full time.
So you're
So that's
pausing
what I've been doing.
college to do launch school.
Correct. Yes.
Wow, okay. Okay, and
Priorities.
right, yeah. Um, and I wanted to bring you three on because I caught wind of what you guys were doing, and I thought it was just such an interesting story to share, underrated story, and I think could be very, very beneficial. So you three are all in core curriculum, are still going through it, and you guys are basically formed a group, a study group of sorts that you meet regularly. And I've heard stories like this a lot. Of course, it happens a lot, and it usually happens behind the scenes. It's a phenomenon I've seen over and over, but it's been difficult for me to articulate to others. So it's hard for me to force other people to find people to work with, right? It's not an assignment I can assign. So I just thought sharing your group story might encourage other people to think in this direction a little bit, and just because I think it has some very positive consequences. So first of all, I just wanted you to explain the setup you three have going.
So the basic setup has now evolved. I should say that the setup has now evolved into the only sort of requirement in the group is that we meet once a week, for however long we feel like meeting. It's like at 4:30 on Wednesdays we meet.
How long does it usually go?
Man, somebody has to run an hour, if not 2 to 3.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
That
I
that's
think
that's
That
quite a commitment.
at this point. So we have I will say that we have recently all arrived at the same course again. There was a split that actually inspired the sort of weekly meeting, where I sort of fell behind a little bit, and so
And this is Ben.
that yeah. Sorry, this is Ben, and that made it a little bit hard to talk on the topics, on the curriculum topics, and so we started just sort of the meetings turned into just sort of hanging out and a little bit of accountability, but then
So how do you find sort of if it wasn't technically oriented, or if it was, and let's say you're in different courses, and I think this is the biggest hang up with groups, right? That people go in different paces.
Right.
Do you find just talking about
Mhm.
accountability and things like that is helpful, or do you find that you definitely should, at some point, you run out of things to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in here. So this is Arthur. I think calling what we have a study group it sounds really formal, and maybe it sounds um, I don't know. I don't think I think that there is, we were formed to do formal studying. There's also a lot of informal support and just riffraffing that goes on, that sort of keeps us powered or motivated in the same way as well. So and I think the thing has evolved organically from the start. Like Ben alluded to, we weren't always doing weekly meetings. And a lot of times at the beginning that might look like, some days we might be doing video calls every day or every other day, but it was never really scheduled or never really set. We formalized it more as time has gone on, but it started as a very sort of organic thing.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things as its value proves itself, you almost build your life around it, like knowing
Yeah,
that that happens, you don't schedule anything at that time versus it's one of those things that like you can punt on, if you happen to be free, you'll attend because you don't know the value of it. So
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like a league, basketball league or something, or bowling league. You have a game.
Hmm.
Right.
And just to add on to what Arthur said, and this is Gabe, by the way, our meetings are like 2 hours to 3 hours long, but we only talk about programming like 15, 25 minutes, the beginning, and that's about it. The rest, it's just like catching up on life and just, building a stronger bond with one another. It's not exclusively about programming, which I think is awesome because after programming for 40 hours a week, the last thing you want to do is talk more about programming for another 3 hours. So it's good to like wind down and just catch up on life in general.
So do you want to maybe give a history of how this group formed, how you guys met? Because you didn't know each other prior to launch school. So and you met here. So how did you meet? How did this is the major downside of an online program. There's less opportunities for collision, right? Versus in-person school, you physically run into each other all the time.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think so. In 101, the first launch school course, you're learning Ruby. At the end of the course, there's going to be an assessment that's live, where you're coding in front of other people. And there is, in the curriculum, it's encouraged to get with other people, to do some practice live coding, to do some of these things, especially when we're studying for the 109 assessment. I think that for myself, I mean, I realized early on that A, I was really serious about this thing, and B, I wanted to find other people that were serious about it too. I realized that it's going to be a lot less fun, and it's going to be a lot less motivating if I'm doing this thing by myself. So even before we got to the assessment, I think I was looking for other people to, potentially do some coding with, do some practicing
So this
with,
is
talk
already on
about
your
the
mind,
assessment.
just on your own. It was already
Yeah,
on
for
your radar.
sure.
Okay.
For sure. So I think the way we started is I submitted my code review for my tic-tac-toe game. And after I submitted a code review, I was just looking at other people that had also recently submitted their code reviews. One of them was a guy who had actually implemented the unbeatable algorithm, so the
The
computer
min-max,
wins
yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
I was suggested in the curriculum as like, hey, go to this link if you want to. You could really make your game unbeatable if you spend some time figuring this out. And I had gone to the link, I had looked at it some, and I had put some stuff in my program to really make my computer really strong, but I had never implemented the entire algorithm. And there was a guy on the code review that had done it, and I looked at his code, and it was beautiful, and I was so I reached
Are
out to
you
him. That
talking about
person was
somebody on the call here?
Yeah, that person was Ben. I reached
Oh,
out to
Ben.
him. I said, "Hey Ben, your code is
It's like
beautiful. Do you wanna hang out? Like,
love
do you
at first
wanna
sight kind of thing.
yeah, do you wanna do some practice?" And so that's where it started from my
That's
perspective.
interesting. So you just reach out to him in Slack, and Ben's like, "Sure, your code is beautiful too." And
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went from my
Yeah,
perspective. You guys can talk about the rest, how it all ended up.
Yeah, for sure. And like Arthur, from the beginning, and this is Gabe, by the way, I was very much aware that I needed to be in some sort of group. It didn't need to be three people. It could have just been myself, somebody else, and myself. But I knew because I'm somebody who is like terrified of public speaking. And the moment I found out that you had to program in front of somebody else, and the moment I attended one of the study sessions and Catherine was like, "Oh, can somebody volunteer to program in front of 5 other people?" I was mortified, petrified. I knew that like I needed way more practice before I could even like contemplate doing something like that. And so I probably attended those like 8 to 10 of those study sessions with Catherine. And yeah, and so I kept reaching out to people after the study sessions. I reached out to probably over 10 people, and
Wow.
most of them, yeah, most of them were just, some of them weren't serious. Some of them just
Mm-hmm.
didn't get back to me, or, it just, the glue just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so during one of the discussions, one of the interview discussion things, I saw Ben and Arthur, and I've never seen them prior to that uh,
So the study session
discussion.
was a collision opportunity there.
Correct. Yeah, and I heard them talking about the program, that the code that they solved and whatnot, their methods. And I was like, there's no way that these two guys are not friends, like best friends. They probably live in the same block or something. And it just like immediately I knew that I would fit right into that group because they were just my kind of people. And I know that sounds weird, but like sometimes in a lot of these study sessions, like from listening to other people, you just know that you're you'd be friends with them outside of launch school, right? And so after that study session, I reached out to Ben, and 2 seconds later, Ben sent me a Zoom link like right away. And I was like, wow, I just started talking to Ben, and now he wants to see me live. Like, okay. So I accepted, and we started talking, and right away, super cool guy, great experience. And so that same day in the afternoon, I don't even think Ben told Arthur that I was on the call. Arthur just joined the call as well.
Yep.
And from then, it's just been, everything's been history since then. It's been absolutely the
So
best thing that I've done.
I
Yeah.
mean, it took some effort before you reached that, though. I mean, you talked to like 10 people and you attended all those study groups. This is something I really want to encourage more people to do, which is find opportunities for collision, right? We just don't have the
Mhm.
hallway to run into each other, right? We can't go grab coffee or lunch. So use Slack. We have a great
Mhm.
Slack community. Use the study sessions, right? Generate just opportunities. So many great. I mean, I think Launch School in particular has such a amazing community. I think it's just so underrated. It's not something we really hold up in our marketing copy or anything like that, right? We don't really use that as a selling point. But the
Mhm.
type of students we attract is just it amazes me every day. So lots of great people. So, but it's hard to find them, right? Because again, you don't see them. So um, and you do have to put yourself out there a little bit to let people know. So Gabe, I know you said you are nervous speaking in front of others or coding in front of others, but the fact that you're willing to put yourself out there and keep trying
Hmm.
is something that it resulted in something positive, right? Whereas if you didn't do that, you just kind of be alone, coding alone right now, which is fine too. But again, I think there's some positive effects here in the long run if you can find a community.
For sure. And you're 100% right. The community is unreal. And I feel like in one-on-one, you're so scared of everything. Like you just think
Yeah.
you're like the dumbest person on earth. You can't
Right.
figure out how to iterate over an array. You can't do anything. And so reaching out to somebody else that's maybe in one study for their 109 assessment or in 120 or the later courses, you just don't want to do that. But that's like the wrong approach, because everybody that I've at least reached out to, that I've spoken to, they've always been so kind to me. They've always helped me, the entire community. Every time I post something on Slack, somebody's there to help me out. Some people have been kind enough to listen to me while I program or just watch me and give me pointers. So you have to put yourself out there. I'm not saying spam everybody, but just make the effort, because if you don't, then you're sort of forced to go through it alone, and it's not as fun as it could be if you have other people to go along with you, right?
For sure, for sure. So you guys are all attending this group pretty consistently. So, and I think consistency is one of those things that gets brought up over and over as one of the major derailment factors of mastery-based learning, of launch school, of online program. What's been your secret, either as a group or individually, to just attending your group consistently for 6 months? Right, it's been a while.
Yeah, I think it was the meeting. So there's a combination of a couple things. One, we saw the benefits of having this group very immediately and very very strongly. Um, it was very very obvious to us how valuable this was, and so then that is sort of that consistency was sort of created by the weekly meetings. We didn't really need to meet weekly when we were when we were naturally on the computer. You log on to do some launch school and there's the green dots by Gabe and Arthur's name. It's like, great, I can reach out to him whenever. And so we would do that as like, hey, you around tonight? Great. But then when we started to feel that loss in consistency, and that happened right around the holidays, into early January was when that consistency started to wane. That's when we set up the meetings. And so that was one thing I sort of wanted to go back to. The meetings themselves are the accountability. It's not that we necessarily get a lot of value from the individual meeting itself, but that consistency that having the weekly meeting creates is what allows us to have that creates the accountability and the consistency that allows us to be able to reach out to each other on Slack with any problems and throw each other code to look at and questions and all of that. That all is born out of the weekly meeting and just knowing that I don't know, you just got to be there for it. And if you're not, schedule it. And if somebody misses 1 week, there's no reason to think they wouldn't be there next week.
I think too, the consistency of the meeting actually it creates kind of a virtuous cycle where we're more consistent with studying, and then the more consistent we are with studying, the more consistent we are with the meeting itself too. I think the fact that we're all in this together seriously, and then also, in this together, means that we're more productive at the same time too. I mean, because we do have the meeting, we're also on Slack a lot of the day, right? Like we're constantly, just today, we've been talking to each other about JavaScript declarations. We've been talking to each other about pass by reference, pass by value. If any of us has a quick question, we can just throw it up there quickly, and it'll allow the other two to kind of give that input too. So it, in a lot of ways, the consistency with the group also keeps us consistent with the lessons themselves.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to that, like, to give some a background, but like, I love these guys, right? Like, these are my brothers, and so when you think about your family members, you talk to them all the time. It's not like, oh, you're gonna go a week, or well, some people might go a week without talking to their family, but like, we're talking every single day, multiple times a day, and it never feels like I'm bothering them, or when they reach out to me, it never feels like they're bothering me. It's just natural, it's part of everyday life now. So I don't even think about it.
Yeah, the one thing that's evident for me here is that there's just like a stronger bond than just like assigned groups, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I always struggle with this, in that we have tried in the past assigning people to groups, and it has never worked, because people cannot maintain the consistency, right? It's almost like we mandate a weekly meeting, and it just feels like a chore. And
Right.
we used to do things like have our TAs check in with every TA is assigned, let's say, like a dozen people, and they check in with them on a weekly basis. And the check ins just become a formality. And
Right.
then it becomes chasing people down because we don't get a reply, right? And it almost becomes just a chore, as opposed to this mutual positivity, right? And this definitely requires that every member be committed, and like you said, there has to be a willingness to be there for each other, right? So
Right.
that's unique, I
and
think.
and I think absolutely the reason why this is as strong as it is, or the reason why this is working as well as it is because it wasn't mandated, because we did find each other, because we sort of chose it on our own. Like Gabe said, Gabe's had study sessions with other people. I've had study sessions with other people. Those people are not here now, right? And so I think if there's anybody out there that's listening, that's in 101, or that's thinking, how can I do this? How can I find this? I think that part of it is we were all looking for other people that were as serious as we were, kind of at the same level of seriousness with this as we were, which is, pretty serious, but not like insane. And I think that we took our time to kind of look for people, find people that were in the same boat, and we were just happy to find each other when we finally did.
It's very much like dating. I mean, it's very, you know, I
Arthur's line, "Your code is beautiful." That's what
That's what
clinched
did it.
it.
yeah, I mean, it really is. I'm spoiled because I have 100% success rate with my study group partners being awesome. So I've done 2 study sessions and it was with Arthur and Gabe. But these guys studied with other people and for whatever reason it didn't click. And so they kept on, but this wouldn't exist if they hadn't kept trying to find this.
You know, if you want it, it's out there. Like Gabe said, the law school community is absolutely amazing, absolutely awesome. And the kinds of people that are drawn to doing this, that are drawn to doing the slow path, that are drawn to doing mastery, are great people. And most people don't want to be doing this on their own, don't want to be doing this alone, right? As evidenced by the great community that is Slack, right? But if you need even more than that, if you need study partners to keep you accountable, if you need people to say, hey, what'd you get done today? That's available too, but you got to look for it.
For sure. And attend those study groups, because we joke about it, Arthur, Ben, and I. It's sort of like you're auditioning yourself, because that's the first time other people are seeing others that are going through the curriculum as well. So just put yourself out there, be kind to others, and make the effort, because it's one thing to finish launch school by yourself, but it's another thing to finish with people who you care about and where everybody's uplifting each other. It's just, the experience is so much better. So
And you're not, by trying to get through launch school by yourself, you're not preventing yourself from having to overcome that anxiety. Like if you have anxiety about joining a study group, well, you're going to have to do that on a professional environment anyway. So all you're doing is delaying that moment where you do actually have to put yourself out there and be a vulnerable programmer in front of other people. And so you might as well do it here in the safe space of a learning community and with other people that are feeling equally vulnerable in these initial meetings. All of the benefits of a study group and everything that a study group requires of you is nothing more than the professional environment would require of you. It asks the same thing.
Yeah, it's good practice here in a safer environment too. So I have a follow-up question about just your group in general. One of the main attributes of mastery-based learning is that it throws out this idea of time-based learning. So you get to take your time, learn the material as it fits your schedule, your background, your experience, the way you learn. But the problem is, whenever we have a group, so we've had lots of sort of built-in groups, people who know each other prior to coming to launch school, like teams, colleagues. We've had husband, wives, father, son, siblings, every single type of team you can imagine. And my observation has been that usually they don't, the vast majority of time, they don't really keep pace with each other. How have you guys juggled that, the mastery-based learning part, with your group dynamic?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Great question.
I think first and foremost is the group provides accountability for sure, right? So I think that, even without us formally asking each other, like, hey, are you still doing your thing? I think the fact that we're kind of constantly in the Slack talking about code, talking about stuff that we're doing, provides an incentive. You see other people talking about that, provides an incentive for you to keep going. I do think it's challenging. We started this, we were all at the same point, we were all at 101. That's since changed, right? We got to points where we were in different courses, where we were in different places. I think we always realized that this was important enough that it didn't matter where we were at. Whatever we were getting out of this group, the accountability, the motivation, just the fun parts, I think none of that mattered what course we were in or where we were at.
So the good pressure, it pressures you. Maybe if you're falling behind a little bit, there's some positive pressure to keep you accountable and keep going. Has there been negative pressure though, in terms of like, oh man, I'm just getting overwhelmed here and it's forcing me to perhaps take an assessment when I'm not ready or anything like that. Have you guys have you guys run into that, or has it all been pretty smooth so far?
So as the one that fell behind in the group, that is present, or was up until like 2 days ago when I caught back up. That's definitely present. It wasn't so much that I never took an assessment earlier than I felt like I should have, or you know anything like that. But what would happen is there was just an added stress to oh, I'm having trouble grasping this concept. Well, crap, I don't feel like I have time to really dig in and understand it. But you sort of have to, that's where you have to sort of slow down and recognize that you do need to understand this. But then not only that, but if you're behind, that means the other two guys are ahead and have gone over what you're struggling with. So like I was having just a heck of a time with the joins, the SQL joins for a little while. And while that was very stressful to feel like, oh, my struggles with this are putting me further behind, at the same time, I was able to reach out to these guys and say, hey, you've already mastered this. Help me master this. And so I think while I may have been stressed in feeling behind, while I may have been stressed about my pace, I actually think I moved through it faster because I had other people that were able to help me with concepts that I was struggling
That's
with.
great. And what about on the other side, if Arthur or Gabe, when you had to explain that, how did you not feel? Because I always find teaching is that just it takes your understanding to another level when you have to explain a concept rather than just make it work or answer questions about it, right? Did you guys feel that if either one sort of explaining a topic? That's another good thing about a group, right? You're able to have like a built-in classroom almost.
Oh yeah.
For sure. No, I mean, you're 100% right. You feel like you know something until you have to teach somebody. So this happens a lot with me. I can't speak for the other guys, but when Ben or Arthur asks something in our Slack group, I always feel like it's my job to be 100% right. So if I feel like I'm iffy about something, I'll go back to the Ruby book and I'll read it again just to make sure that I'm giving them the right information, or I'll go to Google and check out Stack Overflow or something to make sure that I know it enough so that I can at least point them to the right direction.
Yeah, especially at launch school when you have high caliber students and the assessment's quite precise. I mean, you can't be fuzzy, right? So it forces you to test and double test things and double check and look at documentation, and it takes your understanding to another level.
And I think just to add on to the question about pace and what happens when that becomes a factor, I think that maybe the other side of this is that, Ben spoke a little bit to the mastery side of this, but I think the other part is like we are moving quicker together than we would have moved by ourselves. And I don't, it feels a little weird to say that if we're talking about mastery based stuff, because it's not a race and we're not trying to do this as fast as possible. But I do think it's absolutely true that for all of us, we're getting each other through the curriculum because we're helping each other understand when we've achieved mastery, when we've reached a certain level with this stuff, right? So for example, when we all met, we were in 101, and taking the 109 assessment, like Gabe has said before, is the scariest thing, right? It's this thing you don't know. You haven't taken this assessment before. And we carried each other through that assessment. I mean, I know I'm not alone in this. Looking at other students, plenty of people have done this, where the time you spend studying for that assessment is equal to or greater than the amount of time it took for you to get through the course itself, right? So we spent so many hours studying for this thing, prepping for this thing, until we all sort of just looked at each other and said, guys, we're ready. We have to take this thing now. Like, we can't waste another month or two like reviewing this stuff, because we've already spent months reviewing this stuff. Like, we're ready. We need to go now. So I think helping each other understand when we've mastered something and when we should be confident enough to take the assessment, I think has helped us sort of get through this curriculum at a pace that maybe is faster than we could have done alone.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think you guys kind of crack the code a little bit, and that's why I asked you to come on the podcast to share your story, because mastery-based learning, everybody at Launch School already knows the benefits, right? And the results that we have, that we get out of this curriculum, you guys can see for yourselves. They're amazing and unrivaled, right? But what's the trade-off, right? What's the trade-off? The downside is that because it is a self-paced and you're going through by yourself, it's a lonely process. I get that feedback all the time. It's like Launch School is great, I love everything about it. Just feels lonely. That's all, because I'm going through everything by myself. You guys have managed to solve that, the biggest con or downside of mastery-based learning, and yet you reap all the benefits. So I think this is the main thing, right? If you can solve that, and I'm trying to elevate your story so that other people can try to solve it, find a group, find a community. If you can do that, you can reach amazing goals, right, at a fraction of the cost of like a school where you have to be in the classroom, or you have an instructor be there all the time with you, right? Any advice for sort of people earlier in their journey in Launch School, maybe in the 101, or just earlier than you? Any advice for that?
I don't want to give advice per se. I just want to say what worked for us, because everybody's different and whatnot. But the reason why I believe our group worked so well, is because, one, we respect the hell out of each other. So when I have something that I have to say, or a way to solve a problem that may be wrong or whatnot, and Arthur says something or Ben says something, I know myself well enough, and I know that, like, if theirs is better, and that's scientifically proven and whatnot, and that's fact, then that's what it is, So I'm not always trying to one up them. I respect, and we each respect each other immensely. We care about each other. Like Arthur and Ben said, our goals are incredibly aligned. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think the biggest thing is just we care about each other. It's more than just Launch School. And to reiterate the point that I said earlier, graduating from Launch School is cool and all, but what's even cooler is graduating with my boys. So everything else is awesome, but like it's so much more than Launch School itself, right? It's about how they're doing personally, and yeah, and being there for them whenever they need me.
People who finish Launch School, or who are here first of all, but who finish, I mean, you fast forward 5 years from today, I mean, people are going to be doing amazing things, and it's a great place. I mean, one of the best places to learn, to meet, future startup co-founders or project co-founder, whatever it is you guys want to do. Yeah. That's one of the main reasons for going to like a really great school, isn't it? When you go to, I'm sure you got great teachers and all that, great buildings and all that, but really you have great peers. And I think that's what we have here at Launch School, an amazing peer group. And so you guys have definitely taken advantage of that. So what's next for you guys? Finish up the curriculum, do the fall capstone. Is that, and you guys are, I guess, coming in as a team. No splitting that up.
No negotiation.
Okay, all right.
No, I remember speaking to you, Chris, and you mentioned that, wow, this is the earliest that a group has ever been formed for a capstone cohort. And I was like, if you had asked us, we would have said that we would have been in the same group by like 109, So we were.
I think we're probably going to do our professional interviews as a package.
Yeah, just go, hey, I've known groups like that where they come in as a group and they'll build themselves out like in a month at a like, $50,000 a month or something. Maybe that's in your future too. I don't know if you guys want to do that, but yeah, I think exactly, find a good group, and again, fast forward a few years after you guys go through capstone, and after we're done with this coronavirus thing, cross our fingers.
Yeah,
you guys are. It's almost like you can sort of see that there's success in your future, right? As long as you stick with it, as long as you stick with each other. No doubt in my mind. So I'm looking forward to, keeping track with you guys. Maybe we'll check back in, after capstone.
Love it.
And just catch up, do it before and after.
Yeah. Sounds great.
For sure.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks for stopping on the podcast, and good luck the rest of the way. And I'm sure we'll be in touch for capstone.
Thanks for listening to the Launch School podcast. Check back for new episodes and don't forget to like, subscribe, and review.